Hey there everyone, welcome back to Press for Truth TV. Today is Monday, April 23rd, 2012, and I don't know if you've been following what's been taking place in Montreal, Quebec in the last couple days, just over the weekend, but I thought today I'd break it down for you, my observations of what's been taking place there over the last couple days. And as some of you may recall, there have been huge rallies and protests going on there, organized by the students because of the proposed hike in tuition fees, where some of their tuitions are going to be doubling. I've seen some reports saying that the hike in tuition fees will increase by 75% in the next 5 years. So clearly the students are upset, and rightly so. Now, that being said, even with the proposed tuition hike, they still are going to have some of the lowest tuition rates in the country, even with the hikes. But still, that doesn't make it right, or doesn't make it okay. Because as we know, kids nowadays are coming out of school completely up to their neck in debt. It's becoming a debt trap, where you leave there with like this chain and ball around your neck. I mean, I know people who are paying off their OSAP student loans. Some people I've known who have been paying it off for 10, even 15 years after graduating. So people are coming out of the schools completely up to their neck in debt, and it's holding them back. So the Quebec students have recognized this and want to have their voices heard, and so they're taken to the streets over the last few days. In fact, Friday and Saturday were some of the largest protests that have happened yet as a date, where nearly 300,000 people took to the streets. And now what we're starting to see is all the earmarks or calling cards, or whatever you want to call it, of when you start to see protests get to this size and they start getting attention from other people in the country and the mainstream media. Well, that's when you start to see some of the same things happening, namely a small group of anarchist types will often show up, followed by a clash with the police that will be portrayed on the mainstream media as how the police had no choice but to fire gas canisters and tear gas into the crowd because they were getting violent. Now, I personally can speak from first-hand experience from being in protests in Quebec, where I've personally witnessed with my own eyes how the police not only understand mob mentality, but they know how to manipulate mob mentality. And the way they often do it, I've seen it with my own eyes, where a group of peaceful protesters are just sitting there, exercising their right to the freedom of assembly, and all of a sudden some police officers will change up the front line and bring out more menacing looking officers with gas masks and riot shields. And this causes the protesters to take notice and get into a defensive state of mind and saying, oh, they're preparing for something here. And so there's this back and forth escalation that happens between the police officers upping their intimidation level or intimidation factor, the protesters taking notice, and then when it comes down to it, all that is required is for one single person to either throw the first rock or push an officer or do anything, and then boom, the police have the excuse to clamp down on the entire crowd, shooting tear gas and pepper spray, and arresting everyone and silencing the voice of the legitimate hundreds of thousands of protesters who are upset with the rise in tuition fees. So I'll show you some of the things that I've found just digging around. Here, first of all, is a picture of the students on Saturday, and you can just see this thing is absolutely massive, and so the police have to counter that in some sort of way. So here's some of the things we're seeing. Here's an article just recently out from RT, and it says, at least 50 protesters have been arrested in Montreal as police clamp down on a demonstration against plans to develop northern Quebec. This comes after students clashed with police over proposed hikes in tuition fees a day earlier. The Saturday protests was attended by students, environmentalists, a group of hardline Quebec separatists, and Aboriginal groups, the Canadian press reported. A police spokeswoman said between 50 and 75 people were arrested around midday on Saturday after police determined the protest to be an illegal gathering. It goes on to say here, the latest arrests come after 17 protesters were detained on Friday as hundreds of demonstrators protesting against hikes in tuition fees clashed with police in Quebec. And here is some footage from some of these clashes so you can see what it's been like. Things are clearly getting intense. Now I have here another report from the Montreal Gazette. Let's see how they are portraying this thing.
Explosions of stun grenades echoed around Palais de Congrès as Montreal riot police clashed with anti-tuition hike protesters for the second straight day. It was perhaps the strongest confrontation yet since the student strike against planned tuition increases began almost 10 weeks ago. Today's protest was planned to get the attention of Premier Jean Charest himself. He was scheduled to give an address to promote his economic plans for the province. A key part of that was his plan Nord, an aim to develop Quebec's north through mining and energy development. Protesters were intent on shutting down the event, but police intervened, and protesters responded by flinging rocks and other projectiles, smashing windows and causing injury. Police also used gas and other crowd control agents to try and gain control. A number of people were arrested. As of 3 p.m., protesters were still moving back and forth in the streets around the area, creating traffic chaos. Phil Carpenter, The Gazette.
And as you can see, more often than not, the mainstream media will say, see, these guys are being violent. And of course, yes, they have footage of a few guys throwing back some of the gas canisters and so forth. But what they won't show is how, more often than not, these things are initiated by the police, and this is a group of anarchist kids there who get on the defensive and begin to fight back. And here's some very intense footage that came out from when they stormed the building where their premier was giving a speech. And things get really intense here. So the students have taken over the convention center building, and the police are attempting to get them out. And now, so they chased the protesters outside here. And I want to show you another clip now that follows this very moment, which is the most violent piece of footage I've found so far from any of these clashes. And just watch what happens here to one of the protesters as he is on the outside of the building attempting to open the door right here. As it plays in slow motion, this guy gets shot in the face at point blank range with a tear gas canister. He opens the door, police officer, boom, right in the face. Let's see that once more. Sorry, it takes a second to load here. Wow. Sorry, it's freezing up there. So as you can see, things are clearly getting out of hand. Things are getting rather intense down there in Montreal, Quebec. And I'm going to actually try to see if I can make it down there. I'm trying to set it up to possibly go for maybe a day or two, possibly on Friday and Saturday, and come back Sunday, so I can get down there, take part in some of the rallies that are scheduled for this coming Saturday, and possibly interview some people, just get some on-the-ground footage and do some reporting right there in Montreal, Quebec. So if I can manage to make that trip happen, I certainly will be there, and I'll have that report put together by the time I get back after the weekend. So I'm going to try my best to do that. It all depends, though, on if I can get a ride there and back, and if I can find a place to stay, and a whole number of other things. So I'm going to work on doing that, because I want to be there right now. So as you can see, things are getting pretty intense over there. So I want to get down there to document it. But anyways, guys, just wanted to give you a bit of an update to show you a little bit of what's been happening there over the last couple days. There's a good chance you might hear about some of this on the mainstream media, but beware, they will try to portray it as how the protesters started it, and the police had no excuse but to react with, or sorry, no response but to react with shooting them. But in my own experience, that's more often than not the case of how it actually all went down. So hopefully I can get some of my own footage to show you that firsthand. So anyways, guys, that's it for today. Thanks so much for tuning in, and I'll see you right back here tomorrow. Take care.